Hello everyone. Today we are going to take a closer look at one of Vincent van Gogh's most beloved works, The Stray Night. My intended audience for this presentation is the general public, especially those seeking inspiration and comfort through art. I wanted to explain the painting in a way that is simple and relatable, showing how Van Gogh's inner struggles and hopes can also speak to our own lives. I built the painting through the Google Arts and Culture virtual gallery. Even though it was online, I could zoom in and closely observe Van Gogh's thick brush strokes and swirling sky, which made me feel more connected to the emotion behind the work. This painting was created in 1889, and when I first saw it, what struck me most was the coexistence of hope and anxiety in the night sky. Despite the darkness, the stars and the moon shine brightly, giving off a sense of warmth. At the same time, the swirling sky conveys an energy that stirs feeling of unease. What makes this painting even more special is that Van Gogh created it while he was staying in a mental hospital. Knowing this, I could not help but wonder, in such a difficult time, how did he see the night sky? Another striking feature is his painting style, the swirling curves that express the wind and light, and the bold, short break strokes that fill the canvas convey Van Gogh's intense emotions directly. It almost feels as if the sky itself is alive, doesn't it? That is why in this video I wanted to take a closer look at this painting and explore together the emotions and meanings that Van Gogh poured into it. Now let's turn to the most striking part of the painting, the night sky. It takes up almost two-thirds of the canvas, becoming the main stage of the work and naturally drawing the viewer's gaze award. Van Gogh used short, broken brush strokes and dotted touches to form flowing curves. Because of this, the sky feels alive, full of movement and energy. Especially the white cloud sweeping across the center swirls like a storm, creating an intense, almost turbulent feeling. The use of color here is also very striking. The deep cobalt blue fills the background, evoking powerful emotions, while the yellow and orange of the moon and stars stand out in sharp contrast, emphasizing their hopeful light. Another remarkable feature is the texture. Van Gogh did not mix his paint on the palette. Instead, he squeezed them directly onto the canvas and applied them thickly. Around the stars, layers of yellow and white overlap, creating a texture that almost makes them glow. This technique allows us to visually experience the vibration and energy of the strike itself. This technique is called im impasto, a method applying paint directly onto the canvas. This is just a way of depicting a landscape, but a means of expressing Van Gogh's inner turmoil and at the same time his longing for hope. In the end, this night sky is not merely a representation of nature. It becomes a symbolic stage that reflects Van Gogh's inner world. Now let's take a deeper look at this sky. Context analysis. The waves of the sky swirling like a stormy sea, and the intense blend of cobalt blue yellow and violet are far more than a simple landscape. They are directly connected with to Van Gogh's unstable psychological state at the time. But this painting also carries another layer of meaning. It is religious symbolism. There are 11 stars in the sky, and this is not merely a factual reproduction of the night sky. It can be seen as carrying a biblical reference. Bango, after all, was raised as a devout Christian under the guidance of his father, who was a pastor. In the book of Genesis chapter 37, we find the story of Joseph's dream. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. Joseph suffered from Joseph suffered from the jealousy of his brothers, but in the end, he became a governor of Egypt and saved his family during a time of famine. This story conveys a message of endurance that if one perseveres through hardship, salvation will ultimately come. The 11 stars in Van Gogh's painting can be seen as reflecting this very symbolism. The crescent moon in the painting is also more than just a description of moonlight. Historically, the crescent has symbolized new beginnings and hope. Taken together, this night sky is not simply the view outside Van Gogh's window, but a spiritual world where suffering and salvation, anxiety, and hope are interwoven. For me personally, this sky is not merely the natural night sky. It feels like a mirror of human reality, where both fear and hope coexist at the same time. Now let's take a look at the cypress trees, cy- cypress tree that rises prominently on the left side of the painting. The cypress tree stands tall and vertical on the left side of the canvas. This vertical form contrasts strongly with the horizontal line of the earth and the swirling curves of the sky. The interplay between vertical horizon and curved lines creates tension while also balancing the entire composition. If we look closely at its shape, the tree is not just a simple depiction of nature. It twists and moves like flames, making it feel more like a symbolic element that embodies Van Gogh's emotions rather than just a literal tree. The colors of the cypress are also striking, painted in dark, heavy greens and blacks. The tree forms a sharp contrast with the bright moonlight on the right. So this contrast is symbolic of death and solitude becomes even more pronounced. The cypress also occupies a dominant place in the foreground, functioning as a visual axis that connects the earth and the sky. It naturally guides the viewer's gaze of our world, linking the turbulent movement of the heavens with the grounded stability of the land. Van Gogh's thick, impasto brushstrokes bring the texture of the tree vividly to life. At the same time, they express his unstable state of mind as he's yearning to reach toward the heavens. Contextually, the cypress carries deep meaning. In Provence, it was a common element of the landscape, especially around monasteries and cemeteries. Within European culture, the cypress has long symbolized death, eternity, and transcendence, each poem rooted firmly in the ground while rising upward to the sky, can be seen as a bridge between life and death. A letter Van Gogh once wrote to his brother. Hell also comes to mind. Looking at the stars always made me dream. To die peacefully of old age would be like working toward a star. Seen in this light, the cypress is not just a tree in the landscape, but a face reaching toward the stars, an expression of inner hope for salvation beyond death. In the end, the cypress is far more than a decorative element in the foreground. It reflects Van Gogh's feeling of anxiety and solitude, while at the same time embodying his yearning for transcendence. Now let's turn our attention to the low fact of planting the village. First, let's look at the color. Unlike the swirling, turbulent sky, the village is painted in the dark and calm tones. This contrast creates a sense of peace across the lower part of the canvas. Next, if we look at the shapes, the rolling hills and olive groves are depicted with soft curves that reflect the natural flow of the landscape. In contrast, the village buildings and the churches are drawn with straight lines, emphasizing stability and order. This visual contrast delivers a very striking message. The use of light is also remarkable. The yellow glow shining from the windows of the house conveys warmth and comfort, creating a human space of solace that contrasts sharply with the turbulent sky. This strong contrast between the chaos above and the calm below makes the village appears as a symbol of hopeful stability. But here's something important. This village is not a real landscape. Outside the asylum where Bango stayed, there were only fields and hills. And the painting we see a village that does not actually exist. This is Bango's imaginative reconstruction, combining the scenery of Saint Remy with the memory of the church in his hometown, Newen. The church steeple in particular carries this symbolic meaning. It does not reflect in Provençal style of southern France, but instead resembles the steeple of the church in Newen, where Van Gogh's father had served as a pastor. This is more than just an architectural detail. It embodies Van Gogh's longing for his hometown, his family, and his faith. While the sky soars with turbulence, the village remains calm and still, and at its very center stands the church. I found this highly symbolic, even in the most painful moments of his life. Van Gogh could draw on his faith and the memory of his home to fuel his artistic spirit and rise again with hope. So this village is not just a simple landscape. It is visualization of Van Gogh's memories, his faith, and his longing for inner state. If the sky and the cypress symbolize his terminal and desire for transcendence, then the village reflects the hope he sought to hold on to amid a death chaos. From my own perspective, this contrast also raises a question for us in the turbulence of our own lives. Where do we find comfort and how do we rise again? This painting seems to suggest that the answer lies in our inner foundations, in our beliefs, and in the things we hold most dear. Vincent van Gogh, after his conflict with Gauguin in others and the tragic incident of self-harm, eventually admitted himself into a mental hospital. From the window of that hospital, he looked out the night sky and it became the inspiration for the starry night. Through the virtual gallery, I was able to experience this masterpiece in this. While normally one would need to visit a museum to see such a work, here I could explore it freely from different angles, which allowed me to immerse myself and more vividly sense Van Gogh's pain and his hope through the painting. At first, when analyzing this work, I interpolated it mainly as a record of his anxiety and suffering. The working sky built up with thick impasto strokes expressing inner turmoil, the dark and heavy tones of the cypress symbolizing death and the desperate historical moment of his life. But I learned more. The biblical symbolism of the 11 stars and the crescent moon, and Van Gogh's reflection on death and the stars in his letters to his brother Theo, I began to consider another possibility. Perhaps this painting is not merely an expression of a despair, but also carries a subtle with toward a more hopeful future. The answer to my earlier question came from one striking historical detail. The window of the asylum where Van Gogh stayed was fitted with iron bars, and in the starry night those bars are nowhere to be seen. By erasing them from his painting, Van Gogh seems to have refused to confine his life in this despair, choosing instead to express his will to keep moving toward hope. For Van Gogh, the stars were not just a beautiful part of the night sky, they were unreachable dreams, and at the same time, the hope he longed to follow until the very end. He endured countless wounds and suffering in pursuit of that dream, and still he confessed. Looking at the stars always makes me dream. To die peacefully in old age must mean working all the way to the stars. Even in the midst of suffering, Van Gogh kept working while gazing at stars. And today, his life still leaves us with the one powerful question. What is your star? Thank you.